Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and hope you guys had a good Valentine's Day with your significant other, if you're lucky enough to have one, or even just with yourself, because we all need a special day for a little bit of loving. Now, enough with the lovey-dovey stuff. Let's get into what we're going to be building today in this jam-packed tutorial. Now, what you see on the screen is a Twitter client, and as I'm scrolling up and down, you can see that all of the collection views cells are populated with the statuses or the Twitter updates that are on your Twitter homepage. You can think of it that way. And in the end of this tutorial, you're going to be able to put this entire application together, and it will look at your Twitter account for all of these live updates. Now, there's quite a bit going on here, so let's take a look at how we want to tackle this project as a whole. And I've broken it down into a couple of steps, kind of like my previous videos. And this way, any like insurmountable task is going to seem possible to at least take it on. Now, what I mean by breaking it up into steps is inside of my Adobe Photoshop here, I have a kind of like a diagram as to how I want to accomplish this task of building out this app. And step one is very simple. I've provided a starter project on GitHub where you're going to have to download the project. So after we do that, we will integrate. Let's see. We're going to integrate a library with CocoaPods. CocoaPods is a dependency management system. I'll tell you what it is when we get to that step. And then we're going to move on to actually creating an application in Twitter. This is just like a two-step process. You go to Twitter's website, their developer's website, and then you create an application and enter some information and get some keys. That's all we need to do. And then next, we will use those keys to authenticate our application to be able to fetch the status updates that come through Twitter. And then lastly, we're gonna create a UI image view and then a text view on the right of it that will contain the image and then the user's name, username handle, and then the actual text update that they're posting as their tweets. Okay. Whew. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's move back to step one here. And to download the starter project, let's go to Chrome and let's see, apparently Swift. Now I'm going to have a link at the bottom to this Twitter client starter project. And then upon entering that URL in Chrome, you're going to be able to get to this homepage, and you can either download the zip or clone it with git clone in the terminal. Or if you're not comfortable with the terminal, let's just download it here, and then I'm going to open it. And let's see, I'm going to copy that. And then inside of my user directory, I'm going to paste that file. I'm going to double click on it to open it, and then open the Xcode project file by double clicking Xcode proj. Now, this is a starter project that will run the moment you open it. So I'm going to hit Command R to run the project to launch the simulator. And then let's check out what the starter project contains. Let's just resize it here. Okay, the starter project has the navigation bar set up with the correct color, and then also the title says Twitter Home. And then this app only contains one view controller. That's a collection view controller that contains these cells with one text view in it. And so here's the setup for the project to manually set up the view controller without a storyboard. And then these couple of methods: register the cell, returns the number of cells, and then returns the cell itself. And then, as you can see, the cell only contains a status text view, which is what is showing Twitter status update 0, and then the bottom divider view, which is the horizontal bar. Now, this extension is just a convenient method, so I can add constraints very easily. Don't worry about it so much. Okay, next we want to move on to step 2 here. See, that was pretty easy getting step 1 done, right? Now, step 2, integrate SD Twitter using CocoaPods. Okay, first question is, what is CocoaPods? Second question, what the heck is SD Twitter? And how do we integrate all this together? The answer to that is, first you're gonna need to go to Chrome here, and then just Google CocoaPods. The first website that comes up, cocoapods.org. And the way to install this is, you want to copy and paste sudo gem install CocoaPods, and then open up terminal. So I have terminal on the side. I'm gonna drag it right in here, and you want to copy and paste that guy in there, and then just hit enter. Type in your password, which should be your root password that you use to log in. And then upon installing CocoaPods, it might take a little bit. And so, let's see, it's downloading something from the internet, and then it's done. Depending on if your Ruby installation is old or needs to be updated, you might not be able to do this or successfully install it. So assuming that you got this done correctly, let's install this library called SD Twitter. And the reason why we're installing this, you might be asking, is because Twitter is a pretty well-known and widely used application. It requires users to authenticate via a system called OAuth 2.0, which essentially requires like 2 types of keys to make sure that you're allowed permission to access their systems or their APIs. So OAuth is a pretty complicated topic. In order to write all the code that verifies and authenticates your client, you have to write a lot of code. So in order to avoid reinventing that wheel, we're just going to use a third-party library called SD Twitter. And if you go to github.com/nst/SD Twitter, you can see this library is available, and it's being used by very, very well-known companies out there like Adium and these other guys that say it's really useful. And so what you want to do is you want to read over the documentation and basically get to the installation step. Next, you want to look at this pod SD Twitter bit, and what do you want to do with it, right? So yeah, in order to get CocoaPods to work with your iOS application, all you have to do is go to this, go to the path for your Twitter project, and if you look at Finder, the path of this project here is users/your name and wherever you pretty much put the project. So in order to get the path very easily in terminal, you're going to have to drag, let's say, this file here. And then, as you can see, the path is exactly written onto your terminal like that. And you want to go to that directory by erasing the proj file, and then going to the very beginning of the line, hit CD, which is change directory, into that path. So if you type ls, you can list the contents of that directory, and lsla just does it a little prettier. Now you want to type vi. Actually, if you want to do man vi, it does manual for vi, and it says name vi improved a programmer's text editor, and that's what VI is. So if you do VI pod file, and then you copy and paste that, you want to hit I to insert, and then Command V to paste, and then you want to hit escape, WQ for write and quit, and then we do LSLA again. You'll see that the pod file was created, and inside of that pod file, this pod file is pod st Twitter. Now the next thing we need to do is run pod install, and then it's gonna update some files that are on your computer. Next, it installs st Twitter onto this iOS project that you already have on your computer. Now it's saying that you don't want to use the project file anymore, and it's telling you to run Xcode workspace instead. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to close that, stop tasks, and then you want to do open Twitter client start XC, like that, and hit enter. Next, Xcode is going to launch with the project opened, and you can hit run again, and the project should be fine. Okay, project looks good, and we have the library st Twitter installed correctly, and CocoaPods is used in almost every production application out there that's being built in iOS, and it's very helpful. You're going to have to learn how to use it if you decide to get into the development space of iOS. Ooh. Okay. Now we actually want to integrate that library into our view controller file. And if you look at the homepage for the library, you're required to use Objective-C code to instantiate the API, and then you have to call verify credentials with a user success block. And as you can see, it's in Objective-C, and what we want to write in is Swift. Now, in order to do that, we will create a bridge file. So if you create a new file and hit the Objective-C file template, or the file, you can type in whatever, test, and hit next, hit create, and then this option of creating a bridging header will be created for you automatically. And inside that file, you want to do sttwitter.h. Okay, and now we have the project imported. So now if you hit build, we can call that Twitter API right here, like that. So now is the fun stuff. We will first create a let's create the Twitter API variable right here. So I'm just going to do let Twitter equals st Twitter API, and then we want to use this this initializer here. That is consumer key, consumer secret, OAuth token, and OAuth token secret. Now, the next question is, how do we get these keys and these secrets? The answer to that is you want to go to apps.twitter.com, and then you want to hit create new app. Next, you fill in all this information and hit that checkbox and hit the create Twitter application. I already have one created called YouTube tutorial. And the next thing you want to hit is key and access tokens. And you also want to hit create my access token right here. Next, when that step is completed, you're going to be able to get all of the 4 pieces of information properly right here. Okay, so the first key, consumer key, is that. So consumer key, and then API secret. And then going down, we have the access token, like that. Just that. Let's see. That. And then we have the token secret, which is the last parameter. Oof. Okay. Next, we'll call the actual API method called verify credentials with success block, and we're going to want to use, let's see, what is it here, with user, right, second one, with user success block. I'm going to enter and then enter. Okay, so this first parameter that gets returned is username, and the next one is user ID. And then let's just print out the username and user ID like that. And if we get an error with the verification step, we will print out the error like so. And upon running, let's see if the print statement executes properly. Okay, so we have let's build that app and this user ID printed out correctly. Now, if we look at twitter.com, again in our Chrome browser, you can see that my feed includes this donut picture and this Taylor Swift image from the SF Gate, SFMTA, and Eater SF, because I live in San Francisco or nearby, and it is setting up my Twitter with all this good information. Okay, going back into Xcode. Actually, let's go back into Photoshop to see where we're at. Okay, step 2 is done. Step 3, getting the tokens for the YouTube or the Twitter application, is also done. And then in step 4, you see we're almost at the very end of the tutorial already. Step 4 is going to be listing out the live tweets from your homepage into the collection view. Now we will do that by calling a method get home timeline since ID. Yes. And if you look at the SD Twitter homepage, you can see that get home timeline since ID will get the timeline statuses, and that's just your homepage tweets. So this should be nil. That is the amount of tweets that you want to retrieve, success, and then error. And on success, we're returned the return statuses. Let's just call it that. And then if we print statuses, should be okay. Let's see, error, and then print error. Let's see what gets returned upon success. Okay, let's drag that guy over just a little bit. And then in the console, we have just a ton of stuff, right? So let's return 1, and then we'll get rid of that print statement. Cool. Okay, so what are the useful pieces of information in this return block? Now, if you look through this huge dictionary long enough, you can see that there's a lot of information, and the thing that you want to take note of is the text parameter inside of this dictionary. Now, the way I know that this is a dictionary is to command click into there, and then the success block is called with a NS array of statuses. So if we loop through the statuses like so, and then we get status text, we'll be able to print out that text that says RT at Hassel ESPN. Now let's verify that that actually works. Cool. So now it's saying optional. Okay, RT Hassel ESPN. Whew. Now that looks pretty good. And what we want to do is to, instead of having the collection view cells say Twitter status update 0 and so on and so forth, we want to populate that cell with this this text here. And the way I'm going to do that is a 5. I'm going to create a struct called home status, and inside that struct we'll declare a property called text, like that, an optional property. And then in here we're gonna create home statuses array as our data source, like that, also an optional. In here we'll instantiate it. Let's make sure to add self because we're inside of a block. Equals home status, like that. We'll create a new array. Next we'll append home status, home status text, and then what do we need to do? Let text equals status text as string, and then that text variable will be used like that. And then we want to call self collection view.reload data. Now that's gonna fail, but I'll fix it a little later. Next, we want to go to cell for item at index path, and inside of this method we will actually alter the text like this. So now it's saying Twitter status update and then the index value. So instead we'll get our home status variable like this. If let home status equals, so it's pretty much this index, I think you need the question mark, index path dot item, bracket, and in here we want to access that status like this. Let's run that guy. It's gonna fail at line 43, I think. Oh no, because the API actually calls this success block on the main thread, so it's not gonna crash. Cool. Now we see something more interesting in our app, and what I mean is so we're seeing the actual live status updates of my Twitter page. I can verify that by refreshing, and it says sunny weather brings new temperature record for San Francisco, and that's exactly what it says in the app. Cool. Next, what we want to do is go back to the comp. We're done with step 4. Pretty easy, right? And step 5 is pretty much putting the image on the left and then adding the username username, and then the actual text beneath it. Now, in order to construct this type of view, you can do a couple of things, but the easiest way is to use one image view on the left and then one text view on the right. And then in order to get the text to look like that, we'll use an NS attributed string. So going into going back into the Twitter API success block, we need to retrieve a little bit more information. So if I print out status again, let's see, let's bring this back to 1. Makes it a little easier to parse with your eyeballs. Okay. Index out of range, right? So we want to change that as well. That's why it's crashing. So see, to safely unwrap the count, we will do if let count equals that, and then return count. And then if we don't have a count, we just return 0 to avoid any crashes. Okay. So the print status statement is printing out all this good stuff here. And in order to get the image of the user, you have to reach inside of this user dictionary and then reach inside that to get the profile image URL. In this case, we want to use image URL HTTPS just because it's easier to load. And then let's reach inside by doing if let user equals status user as NS dictionary. And don't think we need that anymore. We need some quotes here because that's a dictionary accessor. And then we'll let the profile image equals user profile. I think it's actually profile image URL HTTPS. So that, and we'll cast it as a string. So, and then we also need the user's name, which is that, and then the user's user screen name, which is that. Okay, so let's just quickly do that by saying screen name equals user screen name as string. Let name equal user name as string. Cool. And then going back up to the struct, we'll use profile image is, this is URL string var name string and var screen name string. That. All right, cool. Let's go back to this and then change that to that. So let's put that down here. Colon, let's see, text, profile, what do we call it? Image, name, screen name. Okay, awesome. Cool. Now that we have our data source being fetched properly from Twitter using the ST Twitter API, we're going to want to load the image into the cell. Now, in order to do that, we will first run the application and see that it runs properly. Otherwise, we're going to fix a few things. Cool. So we have one tweet there. Let's bump it back up to 5. And then we're going to see, yep, the rest of the tweets. So let's change it to 10. And now the cell that we want to modify is down here. We want to create an image view to the left of it, like this. Profile image view. Image view equals UI image view. Return image view. And then return it with the 2 open parens. Let's add the subview, profile image view. And then, because we want to put it to the left of the status text view, we want to add 8 padding to the left, and then we'll make it 48, I think the size of it is. And then we will just leave it like so, maybe another 8 pixels right there. So V0 is that V1, okay. And then we need to add in profile image view like that. And then a comma. And then as the vertical constraints, we need it to look like that, I think. Actually, let's make it 48 pixels tall by doing that. Actually, 8 pixels from the top and 48 pixels tall is what this constraint is saying. Image view. And let's see what we get if we change the image view's background color. No. Red color. That. And then profile. Okay, this needs to be that. Let's see. Missing argument views. Great. That. And then you see the image view that's in red is placed pretty well into that cell. I think it fits pretty well. Now, we're going to want to load the image that is coming home from our home status struct. So in order to get home status into this cell here, because it doesn't really know what the home status is, we'll go in here and then create home status as an optional variable with home status like that. Next, we go into the cell, and then instead of setting the text like that, well, I guess we can still do that. We will say status cell.home status equals home status, like so. And upon performing that set, we'll load the image from that URL that's part of the property profile image URL. So on set, we will unwrap that URL. So let's call it profile image URL equals home status dot profile image URL. This safely unwraps this optional here. Next, we want to construct the URL string, which is URL equals NSURL string profile image URL, and then call NSURL session shared session data task with URL, and then URL, and then enter to complete that data response error, and then I'm going to call it resume on that. Now, data task with URL is just our way of reaching out to the internet and hitting a URL, fetching the data, and then calling a success block in here. Now, if error, for whatever reason, is not nil, we will just return. But first, we print out the error message into the console. Now, we will assume that data is properly returned, and then we construct the image like this. Image, data, that, and then we will call profile image view dot image equals image. So running that, because we're inside of a block, we call self. Running that, we get a lot of good stuff here. Let's see. So let's use a breakpoint to see what profile image URL is. Let's see, print. Get that. And then going into the browser, we'll load what the image is. It's this E icon here. And then we want to actually load it on the main UI thread by calling dispatch async that. So let's run that guy one more time, and things should be working properly. Let's see, what do I have here? Okay. Let's see. Okay. What are we going to fix? Image view. Let's change the color. Equals scale aspect fit. Let's run that. Let's see what we get. Okay. Scale aspect fit is telling the image to scale itself with a proper XY width and height ratio. That's what it means. Now that the image is loading, we can change the text on the right by constructing the string that we want to look like something like that, with the user's screen name, username, and then the actual title or the text update. Okay, now that we have access to the setting of home status, which is here, we will set the text by doing this. Attributed text equals CNS mutable attributed string, and then we have string and attributes. So this will be home status dot I believe it's screen name. Let's see. Okay. So I believe it's actually just named like that. And then we declare the font. This font system font of 14. Then we'll say status text view dot attributed text equals attributed text like that. And then we need to unwrap like so. Okay, let's safely unwrap the name by doing name equals home status dot name, and then performing this here, because if name is ever null, it'll crash trying to unwrap a null value. So let's run that there. Run that guy one more time. We're gonna get still that, because we're still setting the text up there in the cell. Upon doing that, we'll get just the name there, and then we'll append another piece of string like that, and this attribute string that, and then what will we do? We'll do at, and then let's see, do another unwrapping here. Screen name equals home status dot screen name. Let's see, screen name, and then we'll see font. Nope. UI font bold 14. See, I think we need a new line here, and we'll run that guy. So this is a lot easier than constructing multiple labels to represent your text, and it's a valuable trick to maintain your code so that you can keep yourself sane. Now the last bit is to get the actual tweet status by doing that string. Let's unwrap the status. Let's say text equals home status dot text. So we'll add another new line and then call it text. Nope. Text. And then we'll just use a font of 14. That. And run that guy one more time. You see that. Let's see what is happening here. Let's run that guy one more time. Looks like something's not going so well with this certificate. Now, one way to fix this is to open up your plist and then going into the actual code, as source code, and then see, I have the key that I want to add, which is ns app transport, like that. And then that fixes this HTTPS error that you commonly get with iOS 9 applications. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. If we want to fix this cutoff issue here, we first need to disable. Yeah, okay, so editable is already disabled. And then we want to create or use this string. I'm just going to copy and paste here into the size of that. And then we calculate the size. Let's see. Right. So let's get the home status. Let's copy and paste that guy. And then we'll do that. Actually, we'll do that. And then we'll copy and paste that there. Delete that. And then we have that, and then that. Awesome. Now that we have the actual text in attributed format, we will calculate the size equals bounding rect. For here, we just need some size that represents the width or the actual size of the text view, and we will estimate it by using the size of the width, and then we'll subtract, let's say 80. And then for the height, we'll just use 1000. Doesn't really matter what that is. And then for this, we need to use uses font leading union with that uses line fragment origin nil dot size. Don't stress over too much of what these options mean. It's what you need to calculate the size properly. So in here, we will return size view.frame.width, and then that calculated size is height. So we probably need like 20 pixels to match the bottom of the text view. Cool, no more text cutoff, and the cells look like they're resizing pretty well right there. Okay, that is the entire tutorial. Going back to the comp, let's just see what we have here. Yeah, looks pretty good. Now, one thing that you have to worry about is when you're loading the image in here, you should actually include a cache instead of constantly loading the image. What I mean is loaded image. Let's run that. You'll see that every time I'm scrolling the list, I'm using the data on the phone to load an image, even though the image has been loaded already. So make sure you don't waste your user's data plan by constantly loading unnecessary images. And the way to deal with that is to create an NSCache image variable to contain your images, and then look at that cache to automatically load the image. Okay, that was a bit longer than I had hoped, but we went through a lot of things, right? To recap, we learned how to download a project from GitHub, how to integrate CocoaPods with SD Twitter. Now, there's a lot of other libraries on CocoaPods that you can install, like AF networking for making your network calls a lot cleaner, using Google Analytics, using Facebook login. That's all done very easily by integrating CocoaPods in your project. So a very useful thing to learn. I think the next thing we learned was how to actually create a Twitter application, and then using the keys to integrate with the library that will lead to the authentication process in getting the live statuses from Twitter. So a lot packed in very, very little time, but that's pretty much how all internet applications work. You verify with some server, and then you pull down the information, usually via JSON through some API, and then you load up the collection view with the proper properties in your API call. And then lastly, we learned how to resize a cell based on attributed text, and we also avoided creating like multiple labels and text views to generate our cell view, which is always helpful. You don't want to create a bunch of complexities inside your views, because it takes a long time to load the views, it takes a lot of memory, and it's very hard to maintain a bunch of views inside your code. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Please make sure to leave a comment or a thumbs up, or ask a question as to what the heck I'm doing. And I'm going to include the completed project as a GitHub link, as well as the starter project, so you can follow along as you're watching. And yeah, enjoy my next video whenever that comes out, and subscribe to keep the channel going. Yeah, thanks. Have a good day. Bye.